item 132, number 2H on page 19, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. This is a request for new monies for approximately $436,250 for the first year of a 3-year pilot program based on a study resolution that I carried in 2015 that the General Assembly passed. It relates to mental health screenings in our public schools. As recommended by the work group that was convened to process the study, there was a 3-year pilot program that came out to look at implementing these screenings in schools in a variety of places across the Commonwealth. During the first year for which this funding would be applicable, each pilot site would train personnel in mental health practices, develop and refine policies and procedures for this pilot site, and the process of hiring staff. During the second and third year, if we went forward with it, demonstration sites would begin implementing said screenings, and we would move forward to hopefully full implementation down the road.
Okay. Any questions up here? Bob Sharice? Over there?
Mr. Chairman, have the 3 school sites been selected as of yet?
No, this would allow for that process to begin, that study to begin for that pilot program. So that would be my assumption that probably DOE would put out an RFP to select those sites.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Delegate Quinn?
Yeah, thank you. So the mental health screening would be by request?
So it would be voluntary. And in my mind, so mental health issues have been my passion for about 10 years or so now, before being in the legislature and being in the legislature. I'm a big advocate and believer in early identification and prevention. And in doing those, we're already doing vision screenings, hearing screenings, scoliosis screenings, asthma screenings. So this puts that in a proper posture with any other type of physical problem. But would allow the schools to identify early on that if a student might have a problem, that get them screened into potential services that could stop a worse cycle down the road from what we have today, where people are in jails, prisons, homeless, and so on. But it would be voluntary, yes, that was part of the study resolution.
Delegate Cox?
Joseph, I noticed you had either hire or reassign staff. Is that contemplated by elementary guidance counselors? Who would be more most qualified to do that?
I think that would be ultimately up to how it worked out with the pilot programs. When we initially convened the work group to talk about the study, we had looked at potentially guidance counselors, we looked at school nurses at that point. But I think there was some concerns on the side of not every school division has a school nurse or a guidance counselor. At the school in my divisions they do, but that's not the same as I've learned over the years across the Commonwealth. And so there would be the potential that they might have to hire an additional person to do said screenings, or they could rehire and incorporate that into somebody that's already there that they're doing this.
All right, anybody else? Questions, thoughts, comments, staff? Any questions, thoughts? Joseph,
And I
anything
have to
else?
apologize to you.
Uh-oh.
I'll tell you later. I figured something out last night.
All right. Thank you, Delegate. Next in the queue, I see Delegate Lemunion sitting out there. Delegate Lannis hasn't gotten here yet. So, Delegate Lemunion, you want to present it to her? Susan, where is it?
Yeah, page 12.
Page 12.
Got a little stone. I don't know if my arms are long enough to handle it.
Yeah, 2 minutes, so it'll be on page 12.
Which one you want to do first, Mr. Chairman?
I'll do whatever one you want to do first, Delegate.
Okay.
You choose.
Why don't we do the one on page 125?
Wait a minute. You know, which item number?
Line 50. This is item number 139, 1H.
So that's the one at the bottom of page 12 for all of us up here. Page 12, the bottom, number 139, number 1H, direct aid public education, for a bargain price of $3,701,000.
All right, and I'll be happy to tell you about the bargain.
So we're looking forward to it.
Sure. This amendment accompanies, as you see in the language, House Bill 1498. And I'm happy to tell you that 2 hours ago, a subcommittee of the Education Committee reported that bill unanimously unanimously in hopes that it will be referred tomorrow in full education to the Appropriations Committee. What we're trying to do with the bill, and the bill is summarized on the handout that you have, is establish the objective that no class in grades K through 6 in Virginia have more than 29 students. So you can see what the bill does, you can see what current law does. I just want to mention that I've been working on the numbers part of this since last August with planning and budget, with Susan, who's been very generous with her time before and during the session so far, as well as some of the folks over at DO, Department of Education, who spent some time with me Friday, showing how some of the numbers work. I'm fully aware of how scarce money is in the Appropriations Committee, and so I just want to express to you my commitment to continue to work with any members and staff to see if we can come up with a number that works for the committee this year, even if it's not delivering everything in the bill has in one fell swoop, so to speak. There's a couple of folks that are here to testify in favor of this who have come from Northern Virginia, and I should tell you there's a statewide group of about 1,500 parents that are backing this initiative.
Okay, why don't we wait and hear from them, and let's see if there are any questions of you up here first from committee members, and then we'll hear from the state. Ladies, y'all have any questions or thoughts down there? No?
Do we get another
Barry,
one?
okay, let's hear from the proponents.
Are we okay? Morning, my name is Jo Newberg. I'm co-chair of Class Size Counts. We are a group of over 1,500 across Virginia who support this bill because of its direct positive impact in the classroom. We have heard from many parents and teachers across the state that this bill is the most fiscally responsible way to have that positive direct impact in the class to address the small pockets of large elementary class sizes that exist. We know the vast majority of our K-6 class sizes are decent, and the average across Virginia is about 24 students in K-6. However, pockets do exist. I could give you an anecdote on my fourth grader who's been in classes no less than 27 for the last 4 years and doesn't get called on much in his class. I'm sure we've all heard of stories like this. His story is not unique. This bill is quite the bang for the buck, if I may say so. My class size research is there on that handout that Jim provided you. Over 30 years of research in our class size counts flyer that you have demonstrates an optimal class size of 25 or fewer in order to improve quality of instruction, keep quality teachers in the classroom, and can have up to an 18% return on your investment, a direct investment in our students over the lifetime. Look at the STAR study on the back of our flyer. It's kind of seminal work in this area, as are some more recent studies. Virginia must do better to keep its edge as a world-class education provider. Here are a few facts to demonstrate we are losing that edge. First, Virginia has the largest hard class size caps in the nation. Nearly half of all new teachers quit, within 5 years, citing large class sizes as a top factor in their departure. And you know that a lot of our school districts are losing qualified seasoned teachers because of this. We're seeing it across Northern Virginia and elsewhere. The VADOE, in fact, concludes that class size reduction is one of only 4 evidence-based reforms proven to increase student achievement and also to narrow the achievement gap. So I urge you to support House Bill 1498 to ensure no student or teacher is in an overcrowded class, because nothing is more important than the success of our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Hi, I'm Louise Epstein, and I am with Joe. I'm one of the co-founders, but I'm not one of the co-chairs. I just wanted to supplement what you said. I fully agree with her. But I noticed that you were shaking your head when she talked about how we have among the largest class size caps in the nation. There are states which do not have any caps at all. And then there are localities that have their own caps. But of the states that do have elementary school class size caps, there was a report by the Education Commission of the States or something, which said, it was in 2009 and then updated more recently, that for those states, our 35 student cap in 4th through 6th grade in particular is, the highest.
question, is there, I mean, in all the additional lottery funds that we gave the localities this past year, I mean, we had a almost $900 million increase across K-12, about 8% a year, as I remember. Is there anything that restricts them from using those lottery funds to reduce class size?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are, as you well know, a multitude of supplemental types of programs within the direct aid budget. And I'll cite one in particular that is lottery funded, is aid to class size reduction, among others. But if you look at all the dollars and resources that are available, and then how school divisions ultimately spend those dollars, report through, I want to say it's National Survey has Virginia as one of the lowest reported teacher pupil ratios in the country. That's aside from the SOQ, which is in code, which is what I think you're speaking to, but the actual practical application of the available dollars that the chairman is speaking of really does lend itself to a much, much lower ratio. And again, Virginia is one of the lowest in practice, so I just want to point that out.
All right, any other questions or thoughts up here? All right, Delegate Monday, you want to move? Look, we're all very supportive of smaller class sizes. Don't get us wrong, but as Susan just pointed out, we have one of the lowest class sizes in the country. Yeah. All right, Jim, you want to do your other one?
If you just give me 10 seconds to finish up on this one.
10 seconds. Okay, go ahead.
The issue of, it's not the average class size. I'm not challenging any of the comments that were made. It says, as you heard, the pockets of larger classes that we're trying to address, and frankly, that's why a number of 3.7 is so small compared to a statewide issue. There are some issues related to how that number calculates with the existing class size reduction program K through 3, and frankly, that's the kind of thing I'd like to work with you on to see if we can come up with something that works.
Right.
Well, the other amendment, this is related to.
This is 136, number 1H for everybody. It's on page 12 as well. It's in the middle of the page.
I'm going to make this easy and tell you I don't think you're going to need this amendment because we are going to amend House Bill 2140 to make the bill a pilot program in 5 jurisdictions and start implementing this exit questionnaire that was established when we passed the legislation last year. I've worked with Steve Staples, the superintendent, of course, of public instruction. It was his recommendation that we go with 5 jurisdictions as a pilot. And if we did, he told me that we wouldn't need to move any money around. He has the budget. So just keep an eye on that. Hopefully you won't need this.
Strike that one.
Oh, but don't strike it yet.
Maybe I'll have to.
Yeah, hopefully that bill won't come here because it won't need to be here. I know how busy you are, and I wouldn't want to send you any more bills than you absolutely need to see.
Okay. All right, thank you, Delegate Money. That completes that's your 2, correct?
I believe that's correct.
Delegate McQuinn.
Yes. Delegate Monday, the district's been identified yet for a pilot program, or that is to come?
It's fair to say that is to come.
Okay.
It was Dr. Staples' recommendation that there be
Okay.
5. I think the language that we're working on, that I hope the subcommittee is going to adopt tomorrow, is geographically and socioeconomically diverse.
Okay.
But I think it would be the choice of the state board. If there's any district that would really want to participate, I'm sure they'd listen to that carefully.
5 seems to be a magic number, Delegate McQuinn, because on our pre-K pilot programs, we got 5. So that gives us the geographic, socioeconomic diversity we need to try to, so we get a good cross-section of Virginia there. 5 seems to be the magic number. Okay.
All right.
Anything else, Delegate Money?
That's all I've got.
Good, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next, we're in the budget amendments. Should we go ahead and finish budget amendments? What do you want to do? Yeah, I see. Ms. Group, Kay has a budget amendment that goes with the bill? Okay. All right, so, Kay, you want to do your bill and your budget amendment? Okay, so her budget amendment is on page 9, and the budget amendment is related to the bill, is that correct? So why don't we do the bill first? And it is HB 2345. So we got HB 2345 in front of us. Delegate
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of this subcommittee. HB 2345 simply changes the ratio of students to one teacher, LEP students, or in other words, limited English students, or sometimes they're still called ESL, English as a second language. So in the current legislation, we have 20 teachers per 1,000 students. This is standard 2 of the SOQs, and my bill changes that to, my bill raises the number of teachers per 1,000 students. Not sure I said that very clearly. Should I say it again?
I understand. So it's it's currently at 20, you want to take it down to 17?
Yes.
I'm curious,
Oh,
it's all the way around.
see?
You started at 17, you want to take it up to 20.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
So per 1,000.
Okay,
So we're
yes.
currently at 17 positions for each 1,000, you want to increase that to 20, which would be a 3/17 increase, which is almost an 18% increase.
Yes.
And the fiscal impact statement that was posted recently, because it's new, is telling me that that's going to cost $10 million.
Approximately $10 million.
And
yes,
so I'm
sir.
assuming your budget language is $10 million. Okay.
But, Mr. Chairman, I would like to point out that what this increase in ratios yields is that there is one teacher for approximately 60 LEP students. It's easier to picture it that way than with the 1,000.
And Delia, Corey, how do we compare to what other states are doing?
Other states that have a ratio in their code usually have a lower ratio than we have. I have a list. I won't read you the entire list, but
Lower ratio meaning a lower number
oh,
or a
they
higher
have more students per teacher.
than we do?
Yes.
So they have lower ratio of students per
Is
teacher.
that right? Okay. No. Illinois and Iowa and Minnesota and Tennessee have a ratio that yields more students per teacher than Virginia.
It's not good.
Well, it's not good.
And how many have less students per position in Virginia?
Actually, my research shows that there aren't any, but as I said before, not every state has such a ratio in their code.
Ratio is already one of the best.
I would like to add that across the state, as I'm sure you all know, the number of limited English proficiency students keeps rising. In Fairfax County, it's approximately 35,000 students, up 2,000 from last year. And Fairfax County School Board spends approximately $700 million now for those students. So what I'm requesting is a little bit more assistance for the school systems that already go above and beyond what our standards of quality.
Susan, I'm going to ask the same question here. Is there anything that prohibits local school districts from using lottery funds that we're giving them from allocating, if they so desired, allocating those lottery funds towards reducing this student?
I think the language in some of our remediation programs would give latitude to the school divisions to support additional help in that area.
Any questions of Elliot Corey up here? Elliot Cox.
Sure, to your point, Corey, I think what we've been trying to do, especially over the last 2 years, with returning a percentage of the lottery like that, with as few strings as possible, to sort of let the local school divisions make the decisions, sort of where they want to put the money, because there's so many different requests. And I think that's probably going to be our philosophy again this year. So it's not that some of these aren't very legitimate requests, we just feel like that's probably the best philosophical way to go. So that's probably what they're looking at.
Elder Corey, do you have anybody who wants to speak in favor of this bill or in
Were
opposition?
some who said they would?
Yes, I do.
Okay, come ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Michael Moore, Fairfax County Schools. One way to conceptualize this is we're talking a ratio of 17 per thousand. Flip it over, and that's one teacher per approximately 58 students. So the coverage for our ESL students, obviously the number of teachers we have, that the state funds is spread awfully thin. One reason that I think we bring this every year is most school divisions staff well above that standard. So they're doing that entirely at local expense right now. So what this does, going from 17 per thousand to 20 per thousand, actually just increases the amount of money that the state is allocating that helps cover some of the costs that localities are already incurring because they have the lower sizes, the lower class size and the lower ratios.
I might disagree with you about the doing it all at local expense just because of the lottery fund issue that we just were talking about. Money's fungible, so, but we're giving you more money in lottery, and so you're allocating it, and that's, anyway, I might have a little difference. Council.
Very quickly, Mr. Chairman, Jim Council representing Prince William Schools. I would just say that ELLs represent about 26% of our student population. But I think the key figure and the stress point that a lot of people overlook is that 26% represents about 90 different languages. So that it requires a lot of staffing in order to cover all of these various ELLs. And I just appreciate it if you keep that in mind. Thank you.
Elliot McQueen, do you have a question for
Yeah,
the council?
And probably not necessarily for them, but for us, how do we address the challenges that we're taxing on one school district versus the challenges that's taxing on another? How do we, like they're talking about the ESL students, so it seems to be something that's really pulling on your budget. For urban communities, it may be something else. For Henrico County, it may be the eastern part of Henrico and the people that live there. How do we address, or do we address those issues at all as we move along, trying to provide resources?
Elliot Landis got his finger up down there, and
Okay, all right.
he's got a response to Elliot Landis.
Mr. Chairman, this goes to the issue we're dealing with here and many other issues related to the standards of quality. I've become convinced that rather than having assigned specific positions that we, and again, this is not going to be something we'll be able to deal with this session, but long term, we look at flexibility within the SOQs, look at categories. For instance, one school system may need additional assistance for English as a second language because of their population. I know Harrisonburg's in a unique situation that you've seen in school districts as well. But other rural areas may need more reading specialists for their schools. But the SOQ basically says we fund all these positions and everybody needs all these positions. Well, that's not necessarily the case. So I think we've got to fundamentally look at how the SOQs, really as a, I don't want to say a block grant because that has negative connotations sometimes, but seriously more, here are the positions that you can fund and here's your pool of money to fund those positions. But we would probably have to go back to look at the statute and look at that from a budgetary standpoint too. And I haven't been smart enough to figure that out yet, but I think we can at some point.
Elliot McQueen?
Yeah, thank you, and I think it would probably be, well, I know it would be helpful for me to sort of look at the school districts and to look at what's burdensome for them, what's the greatest challenges, and how do we approach it and address it, because this certainly is an issue for them and may not be for Henrico County or Richmond or Chesterfield for that matter, and so it would drain, would certainly be draining on the resources that they're receiving.
So I would think as a local a former elected local government official, what Delegate Landis just said is not everybody is in the same boat. So giving local elected officials flexibility within a broader range and money, let you all decide how you spend the money is something that would range pleasantly within your ear. Okay. Anybody else have any questions for Delegate Corey on House Bill 2345? All right, bill before us, anybody? Delegate Cox. So Delegate Cox has made a non-debatable motion that we lay the bill on the table, which is House Bill 2345. All in favor of that motion will say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All quiet down there. Two no's down here. The ladies say none, okay? All right. Thank you, Delegate Corey, and we've heard your budget amendment too. I don't think we need to hear the budget amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I would just like to add that Delegate Landis, that's really good to hear you say that we need to evaluate and have more flexibility. So I hope we're able to do that.
And we've been doing that, Kay, already in our budget already. We've been getting the lottery funds, and we might do a little bit more this year.
That would always be nice, but what he's suggesting is a huge task, and I understand it.
That's a big one.
Thank you.
All right, so we're back to budget. That was the only bill we had before the subcommittee day, so we're back to budget amendments. I'm gonna wait to take members' budget amendments last, if that's okay with you all. And then, so, let's see, we've got Yost, Munyon, Israel, is Israel here? Yep, it is. Hiding over there in the corner.
Page 15.
So, Delegate Quinn, not Delegate, yes, Delegate Quinn, I got McQuinn and O'Quinn, I'm all messed up. Page 15 is Delegate O'Quinn's amendment, 137, number 1H. Israel?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. The item you have before you, 137 1H, would allow for payment of a study through the Virginia Department of Education, so that they can contract for said study to determine the adequacy of resources needed for school divisions, schools, and students to meet the accountability requirements that we collectively, as a General Assembly, set forth. And I know that, depending on who you ask, every person has a slightly different idea of exactly how much that costs. But I think that the premise of this study would be to identify the base funding level for all students, regardless of where they're located geographically or what other special needs that they may have that the school system would need to pay for. So the study would also analyze the concentrations of poverty and the effect of declining enrollment on the fiscal capacity of school divisions. That's something that certainly our part of the state has not been immune to. It would also look at gaps in growth and achievement among various student groups. I think that this study is necessary because we all know that we need standards and SOQs, and we need to make sure that the schools and students are performing up to par. But I think that we also need to ensure that the money is keeping pace, and we know exactly what that costs. And who knows? I mean, maybe it costs less than what we're putting forth now. Maybe it costs more than we're putting forth. But just to actually figure out what that real hard number is. And I think that if we do that, then that students in every part of the state, but particularly in Southwest Virginia, where we've had our fair share of issues, will be prepared for life beyond high school. And we all talk a lot about economic development and jobs, but at the end of the day, K-12 is where the rubber meets the road and where we really get this started off in the right direction, or we hit a speed bump out of the gate.
Delegate Quinn, where did your $1 million number come from?
That was the number that we were given that it would take to contract for a study of this magnitude, and it's a fairly lengthy study. I don't necessarily dispute or back up that particular number, but there may be someone who can actually tell you for sure.
Given by the Department of Education?
Hi, I'm Mary Jo Fields of the Virginia Municipal League. The state of Maryland had an adequacy study done a year ago, and it's not an insignificant study, and it's not a study that can be taken up just by your hard-pressed DOE staff or by your hard-pressed staff here in the room, I wouldn't think. Well, wouldn't think Susan would volunteer and $1 million is what it cost.
So Israel is the Department of Education, I don't see Ms. Cage here, is Cindy here? She was, but she's not. So are they in agreement with your number or not?
I don't know, I'm sorry. But that is what similar costing out studies have done. There've been a number of these adequacy studies that have been done. And, Virginia is not unique among all the states in trying to figure out, well, what is the real cost of delivering a paying for the school system that we want to have and that we are requiring to be had? And, there've been a number of studies done from across the state. I think the budget amendment before you alludes to that, and one of the last points that, that you would consult adequacy studies that have been conducted in other states.
Delegate Landy.
Two thoughts for Delegate. First of all, seems Steve, usually we're able to accomplish these $250,000, or at least that's the norm, even if your contract down.
Yeah.
In fact, that Medicaid study we did for JLAR, that only cost, I think, $500,000. That was an outside contractor, so the price tag is a little bit concerning. But secondarily, Mr. Chairman, I would say, and the majority leader and I were just discussing, it seems to me that we might want to get at least JLAR to look at what a reasonable cost would be to look at this. It also might be something for the new joint committee on public education that we look at. We've just gotten started. Senator Newman is going to be chairing it the second year, but all these things are things that we're kind of having discussions about related to public education. But I guess my question, I guess, to you is this because we see more pressure in rural areas as opposed to urban areas, and is that what you're really trying to get at from an adequacy standpoint? Mayor Joe represents the vast majority of localities,
Sure.
but obviously you don't represent the entire Commonwealth.
Yeah.
This is pretty broad, and I'm just wondering if it could be narrowed in some scope or form or fashion.
So the short answer to that is obviously yes, it could be narrowed. But I don't know necessarily that it would be a situation that we would want to get into where we send X number of dollars to one locality in a different, if we have 129 different per pupil spending models. So I'm sure that you could pull out specific regions, and I'm sure that I would obviously be very curious as to what those numbers are, west of Roanoke. But so sure, you could do it. I just don't know if that's it's almost more of a policy decision.
Delegate Landy.
Sure, Delegate Ayer, that probably agree. There are a lot of similarities and concerns about adequacy between some of our cities and also the rural areas. So that may be at least as a starting point where we could concentrate. I like the concept, and there ought to be a way to try to accomplish this. I'm not sure $1 million is the way to do it.
Yeah.
But be glad to work with your commissioners, maybe some of our members and see if we can help us.
Any other questions for Delegate Flynn? All right, did you have only one budget amendment, Delegate Flynn?
That's it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next in the queue is Delegate Barak. Dave, I saw you out there, okay. So Delegate Barak's amendment is on page 10. Okay. It is item 139, number 1H. Does you only have one? Only has one. All right, Delegate Barak.
Actually, I showed 8H, Mr. Chairman.
139, number 8H, yes. Did I come up short there? I apologize.
Chairman, 780 students based on how this has progressed in other states. That's probably a pretty conservative guess as to how many people would participate in Virginia. Beyond that point, there would be ongoing savings, which would offset this expenditure and provide savings to the state, which would make this, I guess, an investment in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions for Delegate LaRock? Dave, obviously, have you seen my bubble chart on my education improvement scholarships? So, I mean, I would encourage you to, my education improvement scholarship bill is saving the state 43 cents on every dollar donated. So I would encourage you to come up with something that like that. And the Department of Education documented that the education improvement savings account this past year generated $4.3 million profit to the state. So something like that, your bill is going to do the same thing.
Great suggestion.
So I would encourage you to make that nexus and that connection so we can see what that savings is going to look like, because all you're doing here is showing us the cost, and it's always nice if you show us the savings to offset things.
I agree, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to get too ambitious with projections, but they are impressive when carried out into larger participation levels.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. Delegate Sickles is next on the list.
Oh, wow. I just walked in.
Just walked in. So Delegate Sickles has on page, Susan Mims on page 16.
It's
He
a
only
big
has
one.
one, Susan? Yes, number one, item 130, number 1H. Delegate Sickles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. This budget amendment would require the development of a plan to phase in several recommendations to the Board of Elections. These recommendations, pardon me?
Board of Education.
What did I say?
Election.
I was in P&E for 2.5 hours this morning.
Mr. Chairman, these shows were less than.
I can't believe I said that. These recommendations would conform the SOQs with prevailing practice, thus requiring the state to share in the costs that currently are absorbed by localities. The plan would provide for full funding levels by 2022 and provide for gradual increases in funding levels in the intervening fiscal years. The plan must be submitted to the General Assembly prior to the beginning of the 2018 session, along with the plan's first installment in the proposed budget bill for the 18-20 biennium. Board recommendations included on this proposal are the assistant, I won't go into the details of them, I think people speaking behind me might, but the assistant principal SOQ, the elementary school principal's SOQ, and the support position CAP. The Board of Education noted in its 2016 report that according to JLR, Virginia ranks 39th of the 50 states for state per pupil funding. However, when local contributions are included, the state rises to 23rd of 50, an indication of how much school funding relies on local effort. This amendment is a modest step toward restoring some balance to the state-local school funding partnership. The approach is similar to that taken by the General Assembly toward returning to full funding of the actuarial rates for the BRS. So that's what it does. I could go into more detail on the three SOQs if you wanted me to, but maybe I can come back to that. I think people want to testify on behalf of this budget amendment, Mr. Chairman.
All right, if anybody have any questions up here for Delegate Sickles? All right, come forward.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. I'm Kate Boyle. I'm with the Virginia Association of Counties. Appreciate you hearing this today. Full funding for K-12 has been our #1 priority for many years. We think this approach helps put the state on a path towards a better relationship with localities and school funding, and it gives the state some time to develop that plan. So we would ask for your support. Thank you so much.
Good morning, I'm Mary Jo Fields with the Virginia Municipal League. I'd like to point out that the two recommendations from the board on the principals and assistant principals were first approved by the board in 2003 and reflect prevailing practice. The third amendment, which addresses the instructional positions, I mean, that was a step, I guess, that the General Assembly took back during the recession. and was really related to budgetary policy, not to a policy of how many instructional staff there should be. And there again, the board had adopted, has approved revisions to the SOQ that do reflect prevailing practice. And we think that the approach you took on VRS seems to have worked. You know, you said, this is where we want to be and this is how we're going to be there, to get there. And we think that the General Assembly should be interested in funding those SOQ that the Board of Education has said reflect prevailing practice. And that this takes the same approach of saying, well, this is where we want to be and this is how we're going to be to get there. We appreciate the delegate for putting the in and an in.
Smith?
Tom Smith, Superintendent's Association. Again, we have a primary concern for these, but particularly the support positions. This would, again, as Mary Jo just said, give us a roadmap as to how things may go to reach that goal, and provides, I think, the public also with an understanding is that we do value it, and we would like to move to that point. So for that, we're in support.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Kelly Harris Braxton, Virginia First Cities, and members of the committee. We strongly support this proposal by Delegate Sickles as well. Thank you.
Delegate Sickles, you missed Delegate O'Quinn's presentation, I think, a little bit earlier. You're asking for a plan, an implementation funding plan for what we have in place right now. And Delegate Quinn actually rises above you and says he's asking for $1 million for a study, to study 10 different areas, to study the whole ball of wax is what we have now, the right thing to have. Delegate Landy's expressed an interest, so I think if we're going to do that, yours is early. So I would encourage you to maybe huddle up with Delegate O'Quinn and Delegate Landis and maybe see how you might work with them. I think if we're going to do anything at the higher level, we ought to do that first before we implement and develop an implementation and funding plan. Let's figure out what we need to implement and fund, and that's, I think, what Delegate O'Quinn's $1 million request for a study, a comprehensive study, would accomplish. So I would encourage you to get with Delegate O'Quinn and get with Delegate Landis.
Mr. Chairman, I think my comment here is relevant to what you said, but one of the things that this has is an instruction to include, when they're putting together the next biennium's budget, include this, which I don't know how long that study's going to take, and you're going to develop new SOQs under that study, possibly, but right now, we're worried about right now and getting just into the budget process as the governor leaves and leaves the new governor with a new budget. This would be a good instruction to pay for what we've asked for already, what we require now with the Board of Education.
Delegate Sickles, the other thing I mentioned as part of this bigger discussion is we also have the new Joint Committee on the Future of Public Education. This is kind of what we've been considering and looking at. I know Senator Newman and I haven't had a chance to meet this year, but we're going to try to talk about what we're going to have going forward. That's one option. The other option is, I believe we've got to look at the SOQs and provide more flexibility in the current SOQs. And that goes to somewhat what you're talking about too, is we're not funding at the level what is prevailing practice. The problem, as we heard with Delegate Corey's bill, is we have certain needs in certain school systems for positions. Other school systems say, we don't need those positions, we would prefer to have these positions. So that's a long answer, but it's complicated, and I think there's a way, and I think we're all heading in the same direction. We want to look for that flexibility, we want to see what the costs are, and then how do we come up with a plan to start moving that ball forward.
Well, I'm sure the 6 of you will do what's right for Virginia's children.
Right. Wow. All right. All right. Anybody else have any questions or?
I guess it was 6 of you, sorry. It's not 5, but 6 one just came.
Delegate Landis.
I'm willing to work with Delegate Quinn, be glad to talk to you and
Next is Delegate Lefkovich. And he's on page 11, item 138, number 12H.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this budget amendment, there's some good news, I guess, and that I think the money for this is already in the budget. It simply expands the availability of use of that for scholarship funds for students, college students who want to enter the professional teaching to help fill hard-to-find subject areas and to try to address the teacher shortage problem we have within the state. So I think the two biggest amendments, parts of the amendment would be that I think currently it's only available for sophomores and beyond, and this would open it up to freshmen and sophomores, and then they drop the GPA a little bit to try to capture more interested students.
Okay.
I'll shut up while y'all are nodding, and then I can leave.
Anybody have any questions for Delegate Lefkovich? Very self-explanatory. Do you, anybody want to speak in favor?
I don't know.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you very much. All right, next on my queue is Delegate Ware, but I don't, oh, there he is, hiding behind the pole over there. 17.
Sometimes I've discovered being invisible can be the best thing, Mr. Chairman.
Timing is everything, Delegate.
Yes, sir.
Delegate Ware is on page, his amendment's on page 17, it's number 139, number 2H, for the bargain basement price of $1.9 million. Okay. Delegate Ware.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. I'll be brief on this. This is an accompanying budget amendment for a bill that I have that would ensure vision screening for all first-time Virginia students, either at the kindergarten level or grade 2 or 3. It would provide for digital photo screening. And I think the obvious value of this is that it would ensure that students are reviewed and that their eyesight is adequate. There are any number of instances where this kind of screening has discovered students who are not able to see. And so they're sitting at their desk and they're looking at the board or trying to follow their teacher in the elementary grades. And they're not following because they can't actually see what's transpiring on the screen or on the board in front of them. And this would overcome that obstacle, would by this advanced method of screening, make it possible for them to be sized up and sent for screening. I think that's the basic note. As you say, there's a substantial price tag on this, but we're talking about all of the students at this level that are first-timers that had not been previously screened. And that's basically what it provides. I do think there would be, in fact, I'm confident there would be cost savings if we can identify young people who literally are failing because they cannot see, not through any fault of their own or any limitation of their capacity, but simply that their eyes are not as good as they might be, as those of us all wearing glasses have an understanding of.
You're getting a twofer this morning because you got the budget amendment in front of a bunch of us who are on the education committee. The bill is in front of the education committee, and the chairman of education has a question.
Yes, sir.
Well, not a question as much as a statement. Delegate Ware and I talked about this. It is going to be on the agenda for the full education committee on Wednesday. And I've talked to the chairman of this committee, and he would like to see it up here for consideration. And Delegate Ware and I have talked about some ideas. I like the concept and think it's a very important issue. The price tag is obviously, as Delegate Ware and I talked, and the chairman and I talked, is the concern. But we agree, I think most of us, with the goal. Obviously, if you can't see, when you're a young person, you can't learn to read, you can't learn to be a good student in school. You can't see what you're trying to learn. So anyway, Mr. Chairman, that's what I know at this point, and I hope the full committee will take that action, but we'll see on Wednesday.
Delegate Ware, I might like to suggest, I mean, have other states done this?
Off the top of my head, Mr. Chairman, I do not know the status in other states of this. The equipment is a fairly new and upgraded machine to analyze the eye, actually.
I might encourage you just to check really quickly if other states have done so, and then particularly if other states, because I'm also, you got my entrepreneurial nose a twitching here on the savings. I mean, I think if you could see it, if we could say, hey, XYZ states have done this and they've generated savings, that would be a really nice data point.
I think common sense would tell you that if we identify one student out of 25, and it's gonna be more than that, each year, that are unable to see what's in front of them, we're gonna be able to help a significant number of students pass who wouldn't pass, and therefore we got an ADM that's gonna be in the next grade rather than staying at one grade.
Delegate Breesen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Delegate Ware, thank you for bringing the bill, the amendment before us, but the bill as well. Just to brainstorm for a second, I think every child in the Commonwealth needs to get a physical before they come to school. Is there a way that the general practitioner can do a very preliminary first layer, put the little check mark on the application so that when we get into kindergartner, we're only looking at the subsection that the general practitioner said, you might want to take a different look at this child based on what I saw. And then we're only looking at this subset of the universe, not the entire universe of kids. Might be a way to leverage kind of what already exists so that when we're doing it, we're not doing it for $4.95 for every child, but only 13% of the children. Something you might want to consider if you hadn't already thought through those mechanics.
We had thought of that, and I don't pretend to be a doctor, but my understanding is that the average GP certainly would not have this equipment in his office or her office, but would not necessarily be able to pick up the cues in all instances of a child of this age, because they can't, as you would well understand, they can't always articulate that vision problem, because it's what they've lived with.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Doug McQuinn.
I guess I was just trying to understand, so this is a different method of providing vision screens.
Yes.
Okay, and you're expecting this method to be mandatory, that the funding are provided.
Yes.
Now, once a child, if this move forward and then a child has been identified as having challenges, what is the next step? I guess we tell the parents, and then parents have to be responsible for providing glasses or whatever they need. And then maybe interviews, so we're not sure where that will go, but what is the process after that?
There would be a notice sent home to the parents, and the organization that has talked to me about this indicates there's a very well-developed form that could be sent to the parents, as well as being available on file at the school. I have had a number of folks who are in the optometric business who indicate that there is a tremendous willingness to work with school, particularly in the case of young people who otherwise might not be able to afford a full exam and eyewear. So it is my conviction, based on what I've heard, that there'd be a tremendous amount of support to, particularly in the event of kids who otherwise might not be able to get eyewear or get a full exam.
Anybody else up here have any questions or observations for Delegate Ware? You got anybody who wants to speak before we get to your budget amendment?
I don't see,
Okay.
I don't see the fellow who brought it to me, but
Great. All right. Thank you, Delegate Ware.
thank you, Mr. Chairman, members.
Delegate Price. I see you sitting over there. You're hiding behind a chair over here, please.
Sorry.
Page 15. Delegate Price. Number 138, number 7H.
Yes.
Delegate Price.
Good morning, Mr.
Morning.
Chair and members. The amendment would provide $200,000 in fiscal year 2018 for the SPARK program, Summer Program for Arts, Recreation, and Knowledge in Newport News, which offers summer enrichment opportunities for at-risk youth in Newport News. The SPARK program is to help deter juvenile delinquency and to prevent achievement gaps while school is in recess. In 2015, the city had 2,000 students to participate, and in conjunction with a youth employment program and a curfew that was imposed that attributed to youth reduction crime being reduced by 17% that year. In 2016, we extended the program to 6,000 youth, and in conjunction with local businesses, museums, nonprofits, and city agencies, the program offered 4 days a week of exciting educational experiences with meals, safety, and transportation, all at no cost to the families. Over the summer months, in conjunction with the same youth employment program, juvenile arrests decreased by 27%. The city is looking to keep the expanded numbers of youth or reduce the number of students and extend the time frame. Either way, the money would help maintain the program at the expanded capacity. And as you know, in my area, the decrease in arrests and decrease in crime translates to lives saved.
Okay, so Newport News has already got this going, and they would like us, is $200,000 fund the whole thing, or is Newport News going to?
No, it's additional funding for what they would like. And I have with me school board members Shelley Simons from Newport News and Pat Finneran with Newport News Public Schools.
Okay. So how much skin in the game does Newport News have in?
I was going to estimate.
Good morning, and thank you to all of you for entertaining this. Thank you, Dr. Price, for submitting this. We have approximately $2 million of local funds that are going into this each year, along with some state funds that we really appreciate. This is all predicated on this 6,000 hour number that has come about. It's been shown by some research that kids in low income have about 6,000 fewer hours of enrichment and actual instruction by the time they reach 6th grade. And I'd be happy to share that with you by email or whatever, send it to Ms. Hogue. And so we're trying to find a way to supplement not only what's done in the schools, because we think we have great teachers and great programs, but to extend learning beyond the classroom, out into the schools. We've had tremendous success with our business partners. NASA actually saw the program and provided us with $500,000 grant through the Air and Space Center. So we're not only getting a good bang for the buck from what we're doing, we're getting other organizations and entities to add on. Our problem is looking at sustainability, and we're trying to put together enough money that we can say we're going to do this next year, next year, next year. We think it will become a model for the state, but that's up, for you to decide. But that's essentially what we're doing.
So you all started the program for, you had 2 years of experience, summer 2015, summer 2016?
That's correct, yes, sir.
And you're not proposing, so you've got an ongoing annual operating dollars coming from the city of Newport News of $2 million.
No, it comes out of whatever we can save from the school division. For example, the first year, we said we're going to do this. We saw a big spike in some youth violence previous summer. We wanted to do something to keep kids in schools, give them funding, get them some enrichment, and looked at the 6,000 hour number as well. So we said, let's do this just on our own. We probably could have done a larger pay raise had we not done that, but we chose to do this to get it started. And we said that's the only way we could do it, just get it started. Sort of a build it, you will come. If you build it, they will come thing. Now we're looking to sustain it because it has been very good. And as Dr. Price said, juvenile crime has actually dropped because of it.
How much money did the city of Newport News invest in the program this past summer?
Well, the city of Newport News actually did not invest directly in this program. Of course, they do fund this well above the SOQ amounts.
Was it all privately funded in 2015?
No, it's a combination of state. We have some good funding through the state extended learning program that we're rolling into this. We have savings that we get through attrition every year. And we're kind of going year by year at this. But we're looking at trying to build some support from a lot of different organizations, including the state, to continue this in the future.
Ms. Hogue, question.
Just for point of clarity, you mentioned state funding for the extended year, so you all using part of your $1.2 million extended year-round grant for this program? Is that what?
That is part of that as well. The 8 schools that we have right now that are funded for the extended learning, they allowed us to expand. That allowed us to expand from 2,000 students the first year to 6,000 the second year. Not all of it was state, but we did put more local money into it as well. We just think in Newport News, with our environment, our socioeconomic, we want to give our kids the same type of opportunities that other kids have in higher income areas. year-round, summer, after-school, Saturday. And we've had some just tremendous support from the community, so this is an attempt to find some additional money.
Could go offline after meeting with you when you finish your thing, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions up here? Do you have anybody else who wants to speak? Yes, ma'am, come up forward and identify yourself.
Hi, Shelley Simons with the Newport News School Board. I just want to let you all know that I do think that this summer program can be a model for the state, and it really does link into technology jobs in the state of Virginia. Last year, part of the program was a coding workshop and a cybersecurity camp for high school kids. So, you know, of all the budget amendments that I've heard so far this morning, I mean, this one really links in directly to jobs. These kids can leave these summer programs and actually have some real world skills that are really going to help our economy in the state.
And if I could just make one clarifying statement. The other program that I said it was in conjunction with this one, the youth employment program, that's the one that the city funded. So I didn't want to make it seem like the city was not funding something for the summer.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. All right, so we got members here that were not in the queue. I see Delegate Albo sitting over there. He has one amendment. Name begins with an A. You got the number one amendment. I don't know how that works. So we're on page 1, line item number 139, number 3H. Delegate Albo.
Okay, so this doesn't require a lot of explanation because you're familiar with it. It's basically putting a placeholder into the budget, so if you guys have money to restore some of the cost to compete for support personnel. This other questions is the standard thing. I know Steve has it.
Tag's not, Tag here, he did.
Okay.
And we've heard this one years.
I wanted to put it in, so if it's able to do it, you can't put money in if you don't have a little placeholder, so that's why it's there.
Good. All right, anybody have any questions? Thank you, Delegate Alba. Delegate Weber. Okay. Michael is on page 18. Oh, it's the last. Nope, not the last. All right, so line item number 138, number 10H, Delegate Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to do a quick explanation in regards for the legislation that was put in, of which this budget amendment is supposed to cover, and we will probably be recrafting the legislation to lessen because. So Rappahannock County is a very, very, very small school district. The entire campus is all 3 schools are all basically on one campus. They're so small that the punter, middle linebacker, and quarterback are the same kid on their team. And for years, they've received basic supplemental aid if they entered into an agreement with a neighboring school that has a higher LCI in order to give these kids a bigger experience so they could go over to Madison from Rappahannock and get culinary experience, et cetera, and they received $250,000. So however, there was a little bit of a cap on there. So once they on their LCI, they received $1.12 million from the state. They lost that $250,000. So essentially, they gained $155,000, but they lost $250,000 or $200,000. So we put in legislation to try and treat them like Highland County, but we don't want them. They don't want to be treated like Highland County in that they just like their $250,000 that they had in order to pay for their programs to send these kids, out of their little niche to take advantage of some of the other things that Madison has, and Madison can take advantage of some of the things that Rappahannock has. And so that's essentially what the amendment, the budget amendment is basically what we're trying to have accompany that piece of legislation. We're going to have to rewrite the legislation because I did not. Well, I figured it might be more than $250,000. I did not anticipate a $1.3 million price tag. But that's, they asked me to try and help, and so I'm here to try and help.
Got it. Any questions? Kelly's hand is up, he's restraining himself. He's restraining, okay. Thank you, Delia Weber.
Thank you.
Do we have any other members out there with budget members? I don't see any other members. We got Delia McQuinn, so let's just take, your budget amendment up, Laura, real quick for you. Page 13, you can stay right there if you want, if you want, you can stay right there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I have two budget amendments, and I will, let me do the extended school year.
Which is number 138, number 3H on page 13.
Yes. So the extended school year is to remove the budget language. This amendment is to remove the budget language that concerns the year-round extended year school program. And we're asking that the budget language, simply remove the budget language because that would require schools that have 3 consecutive years of successful participation in the program to have grant funding reduced by up to $100,000. And so I'm asking that this language be removed as it penalizes the successful transition to extended school year. This program helps to address certainly young people, give them additional opportunities, and it needs to be sustained, but it seems as it is now that if the school districts are successful in doing that, then they are often punished by the reduction of the fines. And so we're asking that we look at this and then address that issue. One of the examples that I certainly wanted to share with you, like in Petersburg, for example, Senator Dan's district, AP Keto Elementary School, is now fully accredited after being denied accreditation for 2 years. So school board members there said that the teachers and staff members work diligently each day to meet the needs of every individual student. The year-round school calendar provides additional opportunities for enrichment and project-based learning. And to remove the state support the school has been receiving, to move to a share model makes it continuous at AP Hill, especially given the state of Petersburg fiscal affairs. So basically it is removing the language so that people don't feel like they are being, districts don't feel like they are being punished by being successful. And I do have someone who can also speak to that that's here today.
Braxton.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Kelly Harris Braxton with Virginia First Cities. And I just want to kind of give you an example, a real-world example of what we're talking about. We really appreciate the extended year-to-date funding. It is very helpful. It's been a great tool for our struggling schools. And what we're just trying to say is, as soon as a school is fully accredited, and it might be like in the example of Petersburg, the money is reduced. And there may be a little bit of time that's needed to kind of get their sea legs and have maybe a sustainability provision so that you don't just pull the rug out right away. I mean, it's very helpful and it's very much appreciated. Let me give you an example. Just this weekend, the NFC-AFC football game. Some of you may have seen that game. Pittsburgh Steelers played, and they got beat pretty bad, but they have a really good football player. His name is Antonio Brown. He's one of the best players in the NFL, I understand. And the Steelers did great. They got to the NFC-AFC championship, and they didn't quite make it. But next year, if the expectation is for them to make it to the Super Bowl, they probably won't if you take away Antonio Brown. If Antonio Brown is traded, all bets are off. So I think that kind of gives you an example of what we're talking about. To lose that needed money at that time, it could put the schools at a disadvantage. And we're hoping for maybe somewhat a sustainability period or something like that. Does that make sense?
Delia Scott.
First of all, Kelly, if you use the cowboy example, I really like that. Number 2, Susan, what would be the cost for us, sort of the difference in the composite index and the 20% required? You got any idea? That's sort of a perpetuity with the way this language works, right?
The concept behind the language that we're discussing right now that would strike that vision after having participated for 3 successful years to come up with the local side, local match, so that catch up and get the kids on track and things are going along. But then ultimately the grant, the idea is to get them up where they need to be successfully academically speaking, and then provide another school division the opportunity for an extended year grant, so that, it is not meant to go on forever and ever and ever. So for that, and the option is, this is sort of, let's get you up and running, and then, you guys can kind of.
Sure. Sure.
Otherwise, it's always a sort of a cycle.
I understand, Mr. Chairman, and just kind of as a response to that, there are really two issues here. And I think the way it was addressed is with this one fell swoop. But the first issue is, as soon as you achieve accreditation, the amount that you receive is reduced. That's the first piece. The second piece is, after 3 years of participating, you go into an LCI formula, correct? Is that right? And so let's say, as in the case of Petersburg, where they achieved full funding that first year, the next year they lost resources. Am I not making sense?
No, I understand.
Oh, okay.
Now, just a suggested compromise to consider, Susan, is maybe instead of having them go cold turkey right straight to the LCI after 3 years, there'd be a little bit of a phase, maybe another year or two where we phase in, they go to the LCI. But this in perpetuity is not going to happen, I don't think. But instead of just going cold turkey after 3 years, let's have maybe a compromise, a phase-in period of some period. Delia McQuinn.
And the expectation is not to be funded indefinitely, just keep being funded. I think it's just that, you need some, to keep them sustained, to make certain that that they are strong and can continue moving forward. I mean, it's almost like a marriage, you do a lot of things to catch the woman, and you do a lot of things, and then you have to do some of those same things to continue the relationship, make it strong. So
I don't mean to rush everybody, but we got the talks at 11:30, and we got one more budget amendment. I think we vetted this pretty well.
Okay.
So can we move on to your 138, number 480?
Yes, and this amendment provides asking for $2 million for the second year from the general fund for the teachers residency program grant, in addition to the $1 million already in the governor's budget. And the reason that we're asking, because this seems to be a successful program, and it also a program that is very much needed and to be expanded. In light of the fact that we have teacher shortage, that you don't have people who are running to perform or to be a part of the educational institution. I'm hoping that we will look at trying to provide additional funding for this program. It provides teachers, those who want to teach, or it provides them an incentive. It also qualifies those who are particularly in challenging school districts, but it helps prepare them for those districts, and they know exactly what they're getting into. And they have to stay in the school, in that program for at least 4 years once they go through the program. So there are some incentives that's provided, and it also qualifies those educators to be able to go into some challenging schools and provide the education. And I think that was it.
Anybody have questions up here? All right, quickly, Ms. Bryant.
Yes, yes, sir.
Please.
Basically, we're just asking for additional funding. This is a great program. I think Richmond and DCU have done an excellent job of using this program, and it has been very, very helpful. I think they're getting to about 35 teachers a year. One of the concerns is that this is an expensive program, and there is federal funding that has been available in the past. There's a concern that it will continue to be available, and with that being a problem, I think more of the cost for these kinds of programs are going to have to be shared by the state and the schools and the local government. And so there also is a desire I talk with schools across the state, particularly city schools, an interest in expanding to Charlottesville or Lynchburg or some of the other areas that do have strong universities, and they are very excited about training teachers to be specifically useful in challenging environments. So that's our request. Thank you.
Delegate Lannis.
Mr. Chairman, let me just say, that many of us there are concerned about the teacher shortage.
Yes.
And this is another one that we've got to come up with a comprehensive way to approach this. Delegate Quinn, one of the things that we're talking in the joint Committee on Teacher Public Education is working with the schools of education and our institutions of higher learning and trying to come up with a coordinated plan of how to address this. This is a great program. There are a lot of great programs like that, but we need to pool the resources and really try to make sure across the state we're leveraging those institutions and doing what we can do. So,
All right, thank you. I want to remind members, so last week, in our meeting last week, Susan went down the governor's introduced budget amendments, went down the track for that. This week, we've gone through not all the amendments, all the budget amendments have been requested by members, but the vast majority of them. The House is going to report its budget out a week from Sunday. So if you have any input on the governor's amendments or these budget amendments, the time is now. Don't be a procrastinator. All right, anybody else, anybody have anything else? All right, with unanimous consent without objection, anybody objecting? The committee's adjourned.